They're usually a triple volunteer to get into recon, and they've usually had some combat experience in the infantry and then go through a reconnaissance training pipeline. In 1969 and 1970, the 2 years actually had two different missions for the battalion. 69, they were classic reconnaissance missions, and shorthand term is a keyhole patrol. And most of those patrols were go west, and as if you were looking through a keyhole very quietly, you're looking in the jungle to identify the infiltration routes that the North Vietnamese Army were using to get to their objective area. For 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, whose base camp was Camp Reesner outside Da Nang. And so Recon went out for a 5 to 10-day patrol, looked at natural avenues of approach to identify NVA units moving there, and then came back, were debriefed, and they tried to put together a picture from the information. So on any given day, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion had between 24 and 40 teams in the field, and each day part of the administration was to pull 4 to 6 teams out who had been in the field for 10 days and replace them, usually in a different location, with 4 to 6 teams. And it was normally done by helicopter. In 70, to keep the enemy off balance, General Wheeler, who had been a raider, a Marine raider, he said, I want you to go on the offense. And he told the battalion commander, I want you to go on the offense and attack any NVA you can find. That's with a 5 to an 8-man team. To do that, you run what's called a stingray patrol. To run a stingray patrol takes a certain personality to go into the fight and punch the guy first and punch him 3 times in the face and then start to move, because you know that there's 200 to 500 of them. So to do that, you have to have dedicated support. And good patrol leaders never went on the attack in bad weather, because you can't fly in bad weather. They also generally never went on the attack in the low ground, because you can get trapped there. So you look for a target of opportunity, and the idea is to bloody their nose, pick a soft target like a truck convoy, and hit them with a bunch of pinpricks. So same deal, 24 to 38 teams. Now at least half the teams have been given stingray missions with dedicated assets. And the idea is to keep the 2nd NVA division off guard. You're the special operations forces of the day. So keyhole, stingray, 2-type patrols.
Yeah.
And what happens is that team becomes your best friends, because you generally patrolled with the same team.
So just so I to make sure I understand correctly, so then in 69, it sounds like the mission is it sounds like it's primarily intelligence gathering. So we want you to go out, gather information, and don't let yourself be revealed, and don't avoid a fight. If don't get into a fight if you don't have to. It sounds like in 1970 now, you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, we've got about 8 Marines and with these stingray missions, and their job actually is to take it to a much larger NVA force, fire on them, and then bring in fire support on them. So 1970, it's offensive. 1969, it's more intelligence gathering. Is that correct?
For the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, it got very offensive the second 6 months. A good patrol leader wouldn't engage in small arms. He would get a great OP across the river crossing, and he would light up the river crossing every time there were trucks on it,
Okay.
but the NVA got so frustrated that General Ben created counter recon teams whose sole job was to chase uh, reconnaissance teams from the 1st Marine Division, the 3 MAF LRP teams from the Americal Division. He also took old men and stationed one old man on every landing zone that was known west of Da Nang and his area. And the old man usually had an SKS carbine, and they had a signaling system that if helos landed in his landing zone, he would fire off 1 rifle shot or 2 rifle shots, depending on what he had. So it became a real cat and mouse game between if you went into a landing zone and got discovered, they would maneuver a counter recon team that was about 20 hardcore NVAs whose job was to chase you.
November 18, 1970. I wonder if you could just walk us through what happened that day.
Reconnaissance Team Rush Act, 6 Marines and a corpsman were in the Quezon Mountains, which are about 26 miles south west of Da Nang and was an NVA base area. And they were actually running a patrol off a company patrol base that I was running out of the highest mountain in the Quezons, where myself, my first sergeant, Maurice Jacks, and about 7 radio operators and a team for security were up. We were running 8 independent patrols to saturate the Quezon Mountains in an economy of force exercise, or not exercise, operations for the division. One of those teams on their 3rd fan patrol, reaching out like the arm of a fan, was Rush Act. And the 3 days prior, the Quezon Mountains are triple canopy jungle and steep cliffs. They were routing themselves around a waterfall, and Doc Daniels slipped and couldn't grab a tree or a bush and went off the side and went down and got a high ankle break, a compound break, high ankle. It actually took the team about 3 hours to get down to him. And then we spent the next 3 days trying to get him out. They tried to move him and did move him downstream, looking for an LZ, couldn't find it. In frustration, I elevated the evacuation from a priority evacuation to an emergency evacuation for the 18th, which opens the risk envelope for the pilots and everybody trying to save the team. So it was monsoon season. We've been socked in for 5 days, sealing 200 feet. We're on mountains at 800 meters to 1,000 meters. They're sitting at 600 meters in a very stiff cliff-like draw, which the helos only had one way in. And late in the afternoon, there was a little break. A gunship went in and found the team by flying up the draw at about 100 feet above the trees, turned around, went out, and told the pilot, okay, I'll show you the draw. You got to go up by yourself and pick them up. We had no landing zone, so we dropped the special purpose insert extract rig, which is a line, cargo line, 250 feet long with D-rings sewn in the bottom that you snapped in your H harness. Reconnaissance Marines wore an H harness. And then you hooked your snap link to the D-ring, and they pulled you straight up through the jungle. The pilot had to hover and do a straight lift to get you out of the triple canopy, which was about 180 feet where they were getting picked up. And then the pilot nosed his nose down and to gain airspeed so he doesn't drop out. And in that process, started dragging the team through the top of the canopy. So the crew chief is telling him he's got to go up. Co-pilot's telling him that. And the cliff was the draw was a dog leg left. And he rolled into a rolling cloud bank. And in the cloud bank, the supposition is the pilot and the co-pilot both got vertigo.
Mm.
Anyway, we know from the next day when we did the body recovery, the spy rig wrapped around a teak tree that was 10 feet in circumference.
Wow.
3 times. At the same time, the pilot was exerting max pressure and speed to go forward and down. It had a rubber band effect. It pulled the helo back. It did not break. It stretched, pulled it back, and then down to the right. And the nose of the helo crashed into a cliff. The tension was such that it broke the CH-46 Delta in half.
Wow.
And the back half caught fire. The front half smashed into the cliff and, as an accordion getting smaller, crunched it in. So that day, we lost the battalion commander who was riding, as he did all emergency extracts, to lead from the front. And he was standing in the 46 and got hit by the jungle penetrator. We know that because it was embedded in the side of his head. The 5 crewmen, the pilot, the co-pilot, the crew chief, and the 2 gunners, and then the 6 Marines and the corpsmen that were on the spy rig. So 14 Marines and a corpsman, 18 November 1970.